My name is Thea Andrews. I'm 31 years old, and 3 days after I shared the best news of my life, my own sister made me understand that in my family, love could turn into a bill faster than I ever wanted to believe. "Give me $200,000, Megan said, "or you're dead to this family." She didn't yell it in some dramatic public place. She said it like she was stating terms. Clean, flat, final. I was standing alone in my apartment kitchen with one hand still on the counter, staring at the dark microwave door like it might explain how we got there. I remember one stupid detail with embarrassing clarity. The soup I'd reheated was still steaming beside me, and I could smell burnt celery because I'd let it sit too long while she talked. I said, "Megan, I need time to think." "What is there to think about?" I opened my mouth, but she didn't let me answer. "This is what family does, Thea." Then she hung up. 3 days earlier, those same people had sounded warm, proud, happy for me. By Sunday dinner, there would be 7 people at the table, and one of them would be there for a reason none of them saw coming. I didn't know it yet, but that dinner was going to split my life into before and after. But to understand why that phone call hit the way it did, you need to understand what kind of daughter I had always been. I'm an accountant from a small town outside Columbus, Ohio. I'm not impulsive. I don't gamble. I bring my lunch to work in the same stack of plastic containers every week, and I track my spending down to the kind of precision most people make fun of until they need help fixing their own mess. That Tuesday in March, I stopped for gas outside Westerville after work. I was tired, half thinking about whether I had enough milk at home for coffee in the morning, when I saw the lottery sign near the register. $2. I almost laughed at myself for even considering it. Then I bought the ticket. 4 days later, I was sitting on the edge of my couch, checking the numbers over and over on my phone because my brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. After taxes, it came out to a little over $700,000. Not mansion money, not private jet money, but house money, breathing room money, the kind of money that could finally let me stop living one emergency at a time. And the first person I called was my mother. "Mom," I said, already smiling, "you are not going to believe this." She screamed, actually screamed. I heard her pull the phone away from her mouth and yell for my father like I was 10 years old again and had just won some school award worth putting on the fridge. For a few minutes, I made the mistake of feeling happy in a way that had nothing to do with money. I felt included. Within the hour, my father called. His voice was warmer than it had been in months. "Proud of you, kid." 3 words. That was all. 3 words I had spent most of my life wanting from him. Then Megan called, all sugar and sparkle. "Oh my God, Thea, that's amazing! We have to celebrate. We should all do dinner." I should have known something was wrong when she asked the next question too casually. "So, how much is it really, after taxes?" I told her. That part still bothers me. Not because she asked, but because I answered. Because for a few brief hours, I forgot who I was dealing with. I forgot how quickly affection could become expectation in my family. The next morning, my mother called me at work in that careful, conversational tone she used whenever she wanted something but preferred to make it sound like an opportunity to be generous. By Thursday, my father wasn't congratulating me anymore. He was reminding me of sacrifices. By Thursday night, Megan wasn't pretending. She needed money, she said. A lot of it. And according to her, the fact that I had it meant the decision had already been made. I sat in my apartment that night with the lights off and my phone still in my hand, trying to understand how I had gone from daughter to resource in less than 72 hours. What I didn't know yet was that Megan had already started building her case against me. That should have been the end of it. A disgusting phone call, a line crossed, a few hours to cool off. Instead, Friday morning turned into proof that Megan had never meant to pressure me privately. She meant to corner me where everybody could see. I was at work when my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in months. Pastor David Patterson. I stared at the screen before I opened the message. Your mother reached out to me. She's worried about what this situation may be doing to your heart. Generosity is a blessing. I hope you'll pray on it. I'm here if you want to talk. I read it twice. Then I set my phone face down on my desk and just sat there. That was my mother's style exactly. If guilt didn't work inside the family, she widened the circle until saying no felt like a public failure. But she wasn't the only one moving pieces. By lunchtime, more texts started coming in. My aunt, then my uncle, then cousins who usually remembered I existed around Christmas and nowhere else. Everything okay, sweetheart? Heard there's some tension. Family should be able to count on each other. Each one was careful on the surface. No one came right out and called me selfish. They didn't need to. The accusation was sitting underneath every message like a hook under the water. Then the one that broke me hit. It was from my grandmother. 81 years old. The woman who used to let me press pie crust beside her when I was little. The one person in that family whose disappointment could still make me feel 9 years old. I'm disappointed in you, sweetheart. I went into the bathroom at work, locked the stall, and sat down on the closed toilet lid because my knees didn't feel steady enough to hold me. Megan had reached her too. That was when it stopped feeling like a family disagreement and started feeling like a campaign. A few minutes later, I checked Facebook and found the next piece. Megan had posted in the family group. Vague enough to look innocent, pointed enough to do damage. Something about praying for the family. Something about how money reveals people. Enough for everyone to fill in the blanks the way she wanted. The comments underneath were full of sympathy for her. I could feel my pulse in my throat. And then another thought hit me. Colder, sharper, worse than the embarrassment. My father's truck loan. 2 years earlier, I'd tied my credit to it because he couldn't get approved by himself. If he decided to stop paying just to punish me, I'd be the one carrying the damage. Then there was the savings account my mother had asked me to help set up years ago, the one my name was still attached to. All at once, I understood that this wasn't just emotional pressure. They had actual leverage. That night, I went home, opened my laptop, and did what I should have done years earlier. I started counting. I pulled old bank statements, Venmo history, wire confirmations, check images, payment records, anything with a date and a number on it. I kept telling myself I was only organizing, only verifying, only making sense of things. But somewhere around the second hour, that lie stopped working. I wasn't organizing. I was finally looking. The first big transfer I found was from 2019. Megan's name on the wire receipt. $30,000. The first time she and Todd split up. Rent, deposits, groceries, attorney consult, whatever she said she needed, I covered it. I found the message she'd sent me back then, too. "I'll pay you back when I'm back on my feet, I swear." She never paid back a cent. Then, 2021, $18,000 for my father's truck. I remembered the day I handed him the keys. He had smiled like the whole thing was temporary, like we were just bridging a gap until he handled it. He never handled it. Then my mother's surgery. $22,000 paid directly to the hospital after insurance came up short. When I brought it up once later, not in a cruel way, not asking for praise, just mentioning how stressful it had been, she'd looked at me and said, "That's what daughters do." Then Megan again. More rent, more months, more emergencies. More promises that dissolved the second the crisis passed. By the time I was done, it was close to midnight. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the bottom of the spreadsheet. $87,000. I had never seen it as one number before. That was the trick, I think. Not theirs. Mine. I had separated every sacrifice into its own little box, because that made it easier to feel generous instead of used. A transfer here, a bailout there, a one-time thing, an unusual situation. Except it hadn't been unusual. It had been a pattern. I sat there staring at the screen, not crying, not raging, just awake in a way I hadn't been before. Saturday morning, I started doing the next layer of math. What happened if I gave Megan what she wanted? A quarter of my winnings gone. The house I'd been picturing for years pushed out of reach. My future reduced so my sister could avoid the consequences of her own life again. What happened if I refused quietly? She kept control of the story. My grandmother stayed hurt. The church stayed involved. My father still had the truck loan hanging over me. My mother still had access to that shared account. No version of silence protected me. At 2:14 that afternoon, my phone rang. Megan's name lit up the screen. I answered, already tense, already braced. But the voice on the other end wasn't hers. "Aunt Thea?" Everything in me dropped. It was Lily, 7 years old. Soft little voice, unsteady, like she was trying hard not to cry. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, standing so fast my chair scraped the floor. "What's wrong?" There was a pause. Then, in the smallest voice, "Mommy said you don't love us anymore. Is that true?" I shut my eyes. The room went completely still around me. Lily was the kid I took to the zoo every spring. The kid who made me crooked Christmas cards and told me secrets in the back seat like I was a vault. She was innocent in all of this, and Megan had either handed her the phone on purpose or said those words where Lily could hear them, knowing what would happen next. Either way, it was unforgivable. "Lily," I said carefully, because my voice wanted to break and I wouldn't let it. "I love you very much. That has not changed." "Then why is Mommy crying?" I pressed the heel of my hand against my forehead. "You can smear me to relatives. You can drag church into it. You can threaten me. But using your own child to make me cave?" Something in me locked into place right there. That was the line. After I got Lily off the phone, I stood in my kitchen for a long time, staring at nothing. Then I picked up my phone again and called Rachel Whitfield, my college roommate. Rachel was a family law attorney now, which suddenly felt less like a fact about her life and more like timing I'd been handed for a reason. She picked up on the second ring. "Thea? Are you free Sunday?" A beat of silence, then her voice sharpened. What happened? My family happened, I said, and I need help. Later that night, Megan called again. I let it ring a few times before I answered. Well, she asked. No hello, no pretending. I've made my decision. And? I'm not giving you $200,000. Silence. Not shock, not hurt. Calculation. Then her voice changed, got lower, meaner, older somehow. It was the voice she used when we were kids right before she said something designed to stick. Fine, she said. Then I'll tell Lily you chose money over her. I gripped the edge of the counter so hard my fingers hurt. Don't do that. She already asked. She asked because you put her in the middle. She's part of this family too. She's 7, Megan. She's old enough to know who showed up and who didn't. The call ended a second later. I stood there staring at my phone until it buzzed again. Not Megan this time. Todd. 6 words. I'm sorry about all this. That was it. Todd had never texted me directly before. Not once. Not in all the years he'd been married to my sister. He existed in the background of family events like furniture, polite, quiet, useful, forgettable. So I read the message 3 times. I almost wrote back. I didn't. I saved it instead. Something about it felt small and important at the same time. The kind of detail that doesn't make sense until later. The next morning, my father called. He didn't bother with greeting or pretense. You're going to give your sister what she asked for. I took a breath. That's not your decision. I didn't raise you to act like this. The words came out before I could stop them. You didn't pay for my college, Dad. I did. Silence. Real silence. Not the kind where someone is waiting to speak. The kind where they've been hit somewhere they didn't think you would ever touch. When he finally answered, his voice had gone hard. Be at dinner Sunday, and fix your attitude before you get there. I looked at the printed spreadsheet on my table, then at my reflection in the dark window. I'll be there, I said, but I'm not coming alone. He hung up. I was shaking after that, but not from fear. For the first time in my life, I had said no to my father, and the world had not ended. I called Rachel back. She answered immediately. Are you sure? Yes. Good, she said. Then print everything. So I did. Every transfer, every receipt, every message I could prove. By the time I slid the stack into a folder and set it by my front door, I knew one thing for certain. They thought Sunday dinner was going to be an intervention. They had no idea I was bringing evidence. I didn't sleep much that night. The folders stayed on the small table near my front door, thick with printed bank records and old messages that suddenly meant more than they ever had before. Every time I passed it, I felt the same strange mix of calm and dread. I knew exactly what I was bringing into that house on Sunday. What I didn't know was how the rest of the family would react once the story stopped being Megan's version. Saturday afternoon, I forced myself to leave the apartment for a few minutes. I needed groceries, nothing dramatic, just milk and eggs. Ordinary things that remind you life keeps moving, even when your family decides to implode. The Kroger on Main Street was busy in that dull weekend way. Carts squeaking, fluorescent lights humming, people arguing quietly over produce. I was loading bags into my trunk when someone called my name. Thea. I turned. Todd stood 2 parking spaces away, holding a gallon of orange juice and a pack of pull-ups for Lily. His shoulders looked heavier than usual, like someone had draped something invisible across them. He walked over slowly. I didn't know about the phone call, he said. I studied his face. 3 days of stubble, dark circles under his eyes. The one with Lily? I asked. He nodded once. I found out last night. There was an awkward pause between us. Todd shifted the juice from one hand to the other. I told Megan that was a bad idea, he added quietly. And she listened? I asked. A humorless breath left his nose. No. That answer didn't surprise me. What I don't understand, I said carefully, is why you're going along with any of this. Todd looked down at the pavement. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Cars rolled past at the end of the lot. Somewhere, a cart slammed into a metal rack. Finally, he said, because I don't really have anywhere else to go. It was the most honest sentence I had ever heard him speak. Todd wasn't cruel. He wasn't manipulative. He was something sadder than that. Stuck. A husband, a father, a guy who fixed pipes for a living and came home to a marriage built on financial quicksand. He took a step backward toward his truck, then hesitated. For what it's worth, he said, you've already done more for that family than anyone admits. Then he climbed into his pickup and drove away. I stood there holding a carton of eggs, watching the empty parking spot he left behind. Todd knew things. Not everything, but enough. Enough to send a message that short apology the night before. Enough to understand what Megan had been asking me to do. Enough to look ashamed. That thought followed me home. Later that evening, my phone rang again. Aunt Diane. If there was one person in the family who rarely spoke unless something actually mattered, it was her. I answered. Hi, Diane. Megan called me yesterday, she said. I braced myself. She told me you're refusing to help. I exhaled slowly. I figured she'd start making rounds. Diane made a small sound that might have been agreement. I didn't call to scold you, she said. That caught me off guard. Oh. There was a short pause. Then she said something that shifted the ground beneath the entire situation. Your father borrowed $12,000 from me a few years ago. I blinked. What? 2018, she continued. He said it was temporary. Did he ever pay it back? No. Her voice stayed calm, but something underneath it felt old, worn down. When I asked about it later, she said, he stopped answering my calls for 6 months. I leaned against my kitchen counter. 31 years in that family, and I had never heard this story. Why didn't anyone tell me? I asked quietly. Because he's my brother, Diane said. And because people in this family don't like pulling the curtain back. Another pause. Then she added, but I've seen this pattern before. The word pattern hung in the air between us. You're not the first person they've leaned on when money got tight, she said. My throat felt tight. You're just the first one who might actually say no. For a moment, I couldn't speak. All those years I had believed the quiet hero narrative they'd let me live in. That I was the responsible one, the dependable one, the person who stepped in when life got messy. Now it sounded less like responsibility and more like convenience. Are you coming tomorrow? I asked. Yes. The answer came immediately. I was invited, Diane said, and I planned to be there. A small sense of relief crept into my chest. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Her voice softened slightly. There's something else going on in that house, she said, but it's not my place to explain it. My eyebrows pulled together. What do you mean? You'll see soon enough. Then she hung up. I stood in the quiet kitchen holding my phone, replaying the conversation. Something else. The phrase didn't sit comfortably. For the rest of the evening, I moved around the apartment in slow circles, checking the folder again, reading through the numbers, stacking the papers carefully so nothing would get lost. By midnight, the documents looked less like evidence and more like a history book. Every receipt told a small piece of a story no one had ever acknowledged. Sunday arrived gray and cold. Rachel pulled into my apartment complex exactly at 4:30. She stepped out of her car wearing a black blazer and carrying a leather bag that looked like it belonged in a courtroom, not a family dining room. You ready? She asked. No, I admitted. Good, she said. That means you understand what you're walking into. We took my car. The drive was only 15 minutes, but it felt longer. We passed the gas station where I'd bought the ticket, past the elementary school where Diane worked, past the church where Pastor Patterson would soon discover he had been invited into a story that wasn't what he'd been told. Finally, we turned onto my parents' street. The house looked exactly the same as it always had. Single-story brick, faded basketball hoop above the garage. The yard still patchy and uneven because my father had never cared about grass. 3 cars were already parked outside. The pastor's Buick, Diane's Subaru, Megan and Todd's minivan. And in the driveway, right where it always sat, the blue pickup I had paid $18,000 for. I parked at the curb. Rachel glanced at the house, then at me. Remember, she said calmly, you're not there to fight. I know. You're there to tell the truth. I picked up the folder from the back seat. The weight of it felt heavier than paper. My mother opened the front door before we even knocked. Her smile froze the moment she saw Rachel behind me. Who is this? She asked. My friend, I said. Rachel gave a polite nod. She's joining us for dinner. Mom's eyes narrowed slightly. We didn't set a place. We'll add a chair, I replied. Inside, the house smelled like pot roast and potatoes. The dining room table was already set, 7 chairs. My father sat at the head like he always did. Megan was to his right, perfectly composed. Todd sat across from her, staring at the table. Diane watched quietly from the far end. And next to my mother's empty seat was Pastor Patterson, a Bible resting on his knee. I noticed immediately where they had placed me, directly across from my father, like someone preparing for a trial. Rachel took a folding chair near the wall without saying a word. No one touched the food. My father didn't bother with greetings. Let's get this over with, he said. My mother folded her hands. Pastor Patterson is here because we're worried about you, she said. The pastor cleared his throat gently. Your mother mentioned there's been tension in the family, he said. Sometimes generosity can heal these kinds of things. Megan leaned forward. The problem is simple, she said. Fia came into money and forgot what family means. My father tapped the table. We're not asking for all of it, he added. Just help your sister. I looked around the room. Everyone waiting. Everyone's certain they already knew how this would end. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I reached down, lifted the folder from my lap, and placed it on the table between the breadbasket and the pot roast. 7 pairs of eyes locked onto it. The room went completely silent. I folded my hands and looked at my sister. "Before we talk about money," I said quietly, "I have one question." No one answered right away. The pot roast steamed in the center of the table. The TV in the living room murmured through the wall. Somewhere outside, a car passed slowly down the street. I kept my eyes on Megan. "In the 31 years you've known me," I said evenly, "how much money have you ever given me?" Her forehead creased. "What?" "A number," I clarified. "How much have you given me financially?" "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "That's not the point." "It is tonight." I turned my head toward my father. "Same question for you, Dad." He leaned back in his chair, jaw tightening. "We raised you," he said. "We fed you. We kept a roof over your head." "I moved out when I was 18, I replied calmly. "Everything since then has been on me." My mother pressed a hand to her chest. "So now you're keeping score?" she said. "After everything we've done for you?" Her voice carried a tremor I recognized, hurt mixed with accusation. I looked at her for a moment longer than I meant to. Memories flickered through my head. School mornings, science fairs, the way she used to braid my hair before the bus came. I loved her. That was the hardest part of all this. "I never kept score," I said quietly. "But lately it feels like everyone else has." I opened the folder. Paper slid against paper in the silence. The first document went on the table in front of Megan. "A bank transfer," I said. "March of 2019. $30,000. Her chin lifted. "That was a gift." I slid a printed message beside it. "A text you sent 2 days later," I said. "You promised you'd repay it once things stabilized." She stared at the page. I was in a bad situation. "And I helped," I replied. "You never repaid it." Rachel rose from her chair against the wall and walked over quietly, placing another copy in front of Pastor Patterson. He lowered his glasses and began reading. I reached for the next sheet. "October last year," I continued. $17,000, 6 months of rent. Megan's composure started to crack. "That was different." "How?" "I was trying to get my life together." "And again," I said, "I helped." Another page slid forward, then another. Each one carried a date, a number, and a reason. Money for my father's truck. Money for my mother's surgery. Transfers, payments, confirmations. Years of quiet help laid out under the dining room light like evidence in a courtroom. My father's hands gripped the table. "You're humiliating us," he said. I didn't raise my voice. "I'm explaining something." I placed the final page down. At the bottom of it, one number stood alone. The total. $87,000, I said. The room went perfectly still. "That's what I've already given this family." No one spoke. The pastor slowly removed his glasses. My Aunt Diane looked at my father. And for the first time since I had walked into that house, no one at the table seemed certain about who was supposed to be ashamed. The silence after that number landed felt almost physical. Not loud, not dramatic, just heavy. My father stared at the papers like they had appeared by themselves. My mother's fingers kept folding and unfolding the same napkin. Megan looked from page to page as if one of them might somehow save her if she found the right angle. Diane was the first to speak. She turned to my father and said, very quietly, $87,000, Gerald, and you still sat here expecting more? He looked at her with open disbelief, like betrayal only counted when it came from someone younger, someone female, someone he thought would stay obedient. Pastor Patterson rested both hands on the table and looked down at the documents again. I could see the moment something shifted in him. Not because he suddenly liked conflict, men like him usually didn't, but because facts have a way of stripping the righteousness out of a room. My mother reached toward him. Pastor, it isn't as simple as it looks. He turned to her, calm but no longer warm. Donna, when you asked me to come, you told me your daughter had become selfish after coming into money. You did not mention any of this. Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time all evening, I saw uncertainty move across her face. Not guilt exactly, more like the shock of discovering her usual script had stopped working. Then he looked at me. I owe you an apology, he said. I came here without the full picture. Megan slammed her hand against the table so hard the silverware jumped. This is insane, she snapped. She brought a lawyer and spreadsheets to a family dinner. I kept my voice level. You made it a public issue first. You dragged relatives into it. You brought in the church. I'm just answering in the same size room you created. Her face tightened. Mascara had started to smudge beneath one eye, and the perfection she'd put on before dinner was slipping in small, humiliating ways. Pastor Patterson stood, gathered his Bible, and pushed his chair back. I've heard enough, he said. He looked at my parents, not me. I suggest you both spend some time thinking about what you asked of her tonight. Then he turned toward me and held out his hand. I stood and shook it. He nodded once at Rachel, then walked out. The front door opened, closed. A few seconds later, we heard his car start in the driveway. After that, the room felt emptied out in a different way. The moral leverage was gone. The performance had lost its audience. I stayed standing. I'm not here to humiliate anyone, I said. And I'm not asking for repayment. But I need all of you to hear what happens now. Nobody interrupted. My mother stared down at the table. My father kept his eyes on the window. Megan dragged a napkin under one eye and said nothing. Todd looked like he wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. First, I said, my name is coming off Mom's savings account tomorrow. That got a reaction. My mother looked up fast. Thea, I should have done it a long time ago. Her face crumpled, but I kept going. Second, I'm starting the process to remove myself from Dad's truck loan. If the refinance goes through, I'm done. If it doesn't, you'll have a limited amount of time to figure out another option. My father finally turned his head. You'd do that to me? I met his eyes. You attached my future to a threat. You don't get to act surprised that I noticed. His jaw flexed, but he didn't answer. Third, I said, there are no more emergency rescues. No more pressure campaigns. No more family guilt used like a collection notice. If anyone needs help from me again, they can ask directly and accept the answer I give. Then I looked at Megan. And if you ever use Lily to get to me again, I'm done. Completely. Her lower lip trembled. You're acting like I abused her. You used her. That's not the same thing. To a child, it is. That landed harder than I expected. For a second, nobody moved. Then my father shoved his chair back so abruptly the legs scraped across the floor. He stood without looking at me, without defending himself, without raising his voice. Somehow that made it worse. He just turned and walked down the hall toward the bedroom. The door shut. Not slammed, just shut. A quiet, final sound from a man who had run out of ground and didn't know how to stand anywhere else. My mother stood so quickly her napkin fell into her lap. "Gerald," she called and followed him. A few seconds later, I heard the bedroom door open, then close again. Then water ran in the kitchen. She wasn't comforting me. She wasn't confronting him. She was at the sink, doing what she always did when reality became unbearable, finding a task small enough to control. That left the rest of us at the table. Megan started crying for real then. Not the polished crying she used when she wanted sympathy. Not the soft, pretty version. This was messier than that. Her nose went red. Her breathing broke. Her shoulders started shaking. "You ruined everything," she said to me. Before I could answer, Todd spoke. "No," he said, "she didn't." Every head turned. Todd had spent years perfecting invisibility. Quiet husband, neutral face, helpful hands. The man in the background loading dishes while Megan took up all the oxygen in the room. But not now. His face was flushed, and when he looked at Megan, there was no softness in it. "We're $42,000 deep in credit card debt," he said. Megan whipped toward him. "Todd!" He kept going. "You wanted her to pay it so your parents would never know how bad it really is. Stop talking." "No." It came out stronger that time. "You lied to everybody. You used Lily. You made Thea the villain because you didn't want anyone looking at us." Megan stared at him like he had broken some sacred contract. This wasn't just embarrassment for her. This was exposure from the one person she thought would keep protecting her silence. "Todd, shut up," she said again, voice cracking. But he was done being quiet. I should have said something sooner. No one rushed in to save her. Not my father, hidden in the bedroom. Not my mother, hiding behind running water. Not Diane. Not me. Not even Rachel, who stayed still in her chair, saying nothing, because she didn't have to. Her presence alone had become its own kind of pressure. A witness. A professional. A reminder that words said in a room can matter long after the room clears out. Megan covered her face with both hands and sobbed. And I knew, watching her, that this wasn't about the $200,000 anymore. It wasn't even about me. It was about the collapse of control. The end of the story she had been telling everyone else, and maybe herself. Eventually, I picked up the folder and slid the papers back inside one by one. No one tried to stop me. Dinner was over, even though almost nobody had eaten. Rachel stood. So did I. Diane looked at me across the table, and there was something new in her expression. Not pity, not worry. Respect, maybe. As Rachel and I headed for the door, Megan was still crying, Todd was staring at the table, and water was still running in the kitchen. But the real aftermath didn't begin until the next morning. "Give me $200,000 or you're dead to this family." When Megan said that to me, I thought the worst thing that could happen was losing money. It took a little longer to realize the real question wasn't about money at all. It was about what happens when you stop paying the emotional bill for everyone else. Monday morning after that dinner, I walked into the credit union on Broad Street with the same folder I had carried into my parents' house. The lobby smelled faintly like coffee and printer toner. A small line had already formed at the counter. The teller who helped me was a woman named Karen, who had processed my deposits for years. She pulled up my account on the screen. "You want to remove your name from the joint savings?" she asked. "Yes." She looked at me over the top of her glasses. "Are you sure?" For the first time all week, the answer came without hesitation. "I'm sure." The paperwork took about 20 minutes. Sign here, initial there, confirm identity. When she handed me the final document, she smiled politely the way bank employees do when they don't ask questions they probably want to ask. "Everything's updated." I walked outside into the cold March wind and stood on the sidewalk for a minute just breathing. One thread cut. The next step took longer. I called the bank about the truck loan and started the refinance process to remove my name. The loan officer warned me it might take a couple months. "That's fine," I said. For the next few days, my phone stayed quiet. No calls from my father, no messages from Megan. The only person who reached out was my mother. When she did, the conversations always followed the same script. She would begin with safe things: the weather, a neighbor's new fence, something she'd seen on the morning news. Eventually, the conversation drifted toward the real topic. "I just wish things could go back to normal," she said during one call. I stirred my coffee and looked out the kitchen window. "I love you, Mom," I told her. But normal meant I never got to say no. She sighed. Then we said goodbye. About a week after the dinner, a letter arrived in the mail. Not a text, not an email. A handwritten letter. I recognized the shaky cursive immediately. Grandma Ruth. "Dear Thea, I only heard one side before. I'm sorry for judging you. Your grandfather would have been proud of the way you handled yourself. Come visit when you're ready." I sat at my kitchen table with the letter in my hands and cried for the first time since everything happened. Not because someone apologized, because someone had listened. Over the next couple weeks, small things started shifting in quiet ways. A cousin sent a message saying she didn't realize the full story. An uncle called and admitted he had taken Megan's side too quickly. Megan quietly deleted the Facebook post she had written. No announcement, no explanation. One day, it was just gone. Screenshots live forever, though. People had already seen enough. Diane called me one evening with another piece of family history. "Your dad borrowed money from Grandma a few years ago, too," she said. "How much?" $8,000. "Did he ever pay it back?" "No." That answer didn't shock me anymore. What surprised me was something else Diane said. "You're not the first person this has happened to," she told me. "You're just the first one who didn't keep pretending it was fine." 2 weeks after the dinner, Diane mentioned that Megan and Todd had started marriage counseling. Apparently, Todd had told the counselor everything: the debt, the pressure, the phone call with Lily. When Diane told me that, I didn't feel victorious, just tired. Todd called me once. It was a short conversation. I should have spoken up earlier, he said. You spoke up when it mattered, I told him. There was a pause. Lily misses you. My chest tightened. I miss her too. That was the entire call. 3 weeks after the dinner, something unexpected happened. My phone buzzed at 8:42 on a Thursday night. The screen showed Megan's number. When I opened the message, my breath caught. I miss you, Aunt Thea. Can I come over? Love, Lily. The spelling gave it away instantly. This wasn't Megan. This was a 7-year-old who had figured out how to unlock her mom's phone. I called Rachel that night. Can Megan legally stop me from seeing Lily? I asked. Rachel thought for a moment. In Ohio, aunts don't have automatic visitation rights, she said. But this isn't a custody case. You can still reach out through Todd. So I texted Todd. Tell Lily I love her. Always will. He replied 2 minutes later. She knows. She's the one who sent that message. That kid understood more than most adults in that situation. Kids usually do. Meanwhile, small-town life did what it always does. Information moved quietly through grocery store lines, church parking lots, and neighborhood conversations. Pastor Patterson never told anyone the details. But the Sunday after that dinner, he gave a sermon about generosity. Not the kind that comes with conditions. Not the kind used to control people. Donna sat in the third pew that morning. Diane told me that halfway through the sermon, my mother stood up, grabbed her purse, and walked out. Nobody said a word, but everyone noticed. 3 months later, the refinance finally went through. My name came off the truck loan. When the loan officer called to confirm, I was sitting in my car in the credit union parking lot. Everything's finalized, he said. Thank you, I replied. After I hung up, I sat there for 10 minutes doing absolutely nothing. No celebration, just quiet. The last financial tie between me and my father's choices had been cut. Not long after that, I bought a small house. 2 bedrooms, a front porch. The kitchen cabinets were older than I was, and the gutters needed replacing. But it was mine. No shared accounts, no co-signed loans, just my name on the paperwork. I didn't make a big announcement about it. The housewarming ended up being simple. Rachel brought a bottle of wine. Diane showed up with a small fern she insisted would survive anything as long as I watered it on Sundays. And Todd arrived with Lily. He carried a small toolbox and quietly tightened the loose handle on my back door, while Rachel and Diane opened the wine. That's the kind of man Todd has always been. He fixes things. Quietly. Lily walked through the house with the serious expression kids get when they're inspecting something important. When she reached the second bedroom, she stopped. The room was empty except for white walls and sunlight from the backyard window. She turned to me. Is this where I'll sleep when I visit? If you want it to be, I said. She threw her arms around my neck. The kind of hug that says a child has been waiting to give it for a long time. There was one more thing I did that day. I opened a college savings account for Lily. $30,000. Nobody else's name on it. No announcements. Some gifts are better when they don't come with an audience. My father still hasn't called. 3 months. Then 4. Diane says he sits on his porch most evenings and stares at the truck in the driveway. Maybe he understands what happened. Maybe he doesn't. My mother still calls every couple of weeks. The conversations are polite, careful, different. And the door between us isn't closed. It's just no longer a revolving one. The truth is, I didn't lose my family that night. I lost the version of family where love meant shrinking myself so everyone else could feel bigger. And once you see that clearly, you can't go back. If you're the person in your family who always gives more, who always fixes things, who always absorbs the pressure so everyone else stays comfortable, remember this: setting a boundary isn't cruelty. Sometimes it's the only honest form of love left. As for me, I'm still the same woman who sat at that dinner table, just a little harder to intimidate. If you've ever had your own Sunday dinner moment, the one where you finally stopped shrinking for everyone else, I'd love to hear about it. Share it in the comments.